In this video, we'll be talking about backwards reading, which is one strategy you can use to improve your reading comprehension. Before we begin, I have included a link to a reading skills self-assessment in the video description. You may want to pause the video and take a few minutes to complete that self-assessment. It will get you thinking about the reading strategies that you already use. If you are a currently enrolled Nova student and would like some personalized help with reading comprehension or other academic skills, you can bring this self-assessment to your appointment with an academic success coach. This video will cover the goals of any reading comprehension strategy, the framework for backwards reading, a step-by-step guide to using backwards reading, some tips on getting the most out of your reading, and finally, how reading and writing work together. First, let's think about some of the reasons why you might be reading. If you're in college, you're probably reading because your professor has assigned something and you need to be ready for class. Now, your professor may have assigned it because they are planning on having a class discussion. Maybe they're going to ask you to write a reflection essay, or there might be a quiz. Your professor may also want you to be thinking really deeply about how this reading relates to the things that you've already learned in the class. Not all reading is assigned reading, of course. You might just be reading for fun. You might be reading because you're interested in people, or politics, or science, or art, and you want to learn something new. There may be something that you've heard mentioned on the news that you want more background information on. Obviously, there are many reasons why you might be reading. But here's the thing. Sometimes, starting at the beginning and reading through to the end is not the most efficient or effective way to read. This depends on what you're reading, of course. If you're reading a short story with a surprise ending, you probably don't want to read the end first. It will ruin the surprise. But I can pretty much guarantee you that your biology textbook doesn't have a twist ending. Backwards reading is just one reading comprehension strategy, but it has a lot in common with other approaches. Before we get into the details of how to read backwards, let's go over the 5 goals that we've identified as critical for any effort to improve your reading ability. First, a reader needs to understand the terminology that's being used. Imagine you're traveling to a place where you don't speak the language. In order to understand what people are saying to you, you're going to need a phrasebook, or a dictionary, or a translation app on your phone, right? In a way, academic reading is like traveling to a new place. You may find that there are lots of words that are unfamiliar to you. There may be terms that you've heard before, but you've never heard them in that context. Challenging vocabulary can really slow down your reading. It's frustrating to feel like you have to stop every few minutes to look up the definition of a word. So backwards reading, or any other reading comprehension strategy, includes some effort to become familiar with the language and terminology, so that when you come to difficult words or phrases in your reading assignment, you will already have an idea of their meanings. This will allow your reading to be both faster and smoother, so you'll be able to follow the flow and the logic of that reading assignment a little bit better. The second goal of reading comprehension is to understand the writer's purpose or conclusion. When you walk out of your house in the morning, you probably know where you're going, right? Knowing your destination allows you to make good decisions about whether to walk, or drive, or take the train. Also, you have to have a destination in order to know that you've arrived. It's the same with reading. If you know the purpose or conclusion already, then the writer's choices about which details to include or how to structure the argument will make more sense. The backwards reading strategy helps you to figure out what your destination is. That is, the writer's purpose or conclusion, before you even try to tackle the whole assignment. The third goal of any reading comprehension strategy is to become familiar with the layout of the reading assignment. This is especially important for those long reading assignments. If you have to read a 60-page long chapter or a dense philosophy article with 20 pages of difficult logic, it's helpful to understand how the reading is structured. Imagine being dropped off at the edge of a huge city that you've never been to and trying to find your way to a specific location. You may have a hard time finding your way around unless you have a map, or a guide, or a GPS. A reading strategy is your map. Instead of streets and landmarks, you're going to look for subtitles and section headings. Sometimes, those landmarks may not be labeled, but you can identify them by searching for signal words and phrases such as first, second, finally, or in conclusion. These signal words will help you to have a better understanding of how the reading is structured. Not all sections of the reading will be equally important. Understanding the structure of the readings helps you to make decisions about which parts can be skimmed and which ones will require more focused attention. The fourth goal of reading comprehension is to understand the writer's strategies for communicating their message. You know where they're taking you, the destination or the conclusion, but now you want to know how they're going to get you there. Are they using emotion to persuade you? Are they laying out steps in a clear order? Do they provide lots of examples? Or are they expecting readers to draw their own conclusions? One advantage of understanding the writing strategies is that you, as a reader, can be prepared to think critically about the author's approach. This is just the kind of analytical thinking that your professors want you to do. The final goal of reading comprehension strategies is a pretty straightforward one. You want to find out how long it's going to take you to complete this reading assignment. If I'm about to take a road trip, I need to know how far I'm going to be driving so that I don't run out of fuel, right? It's the same with reading. Do I expect to be sitting here for 2 hours? Is it a quick assignment that will only take 30 minutes? Or do I need to plan on several sessions for a very long assignment with breaks in between? If I know ahead of time how long I'm going to have to be focused and paying attention, then I can plan my breaks and make sure that I'm using my time as efficiently as possible. So these are the 5 goals that we are trying to accomplish by using the backwards reading strategy. Familiarizing yourself with vocabulary, purpose, structure, strategies, and length. You may find that some of these aspects are more important for certain types of readings, but your awareness of all of them will help to improve your reading comprehension. The framework that we use for the backwards reading strategy is called SQ4R. Let's go through what each of the letters in the acronym mean. The S in SQ4R stands for survey. This is what gets you started on those 5 goals we just finished discussing. By surveying, you take some time to get to know the reading assignment, to understand how long it is, how many sections it's broken up into, what the ultimate goal of that piece of writing is, and so on. This is a critical part of improving reading comprehension. The Q stands for question. We're going to come back to this frequently because developing and then trying to answer questions as you're reading is a powerful strategy for critical thinking and reading comprehension. The 4 R's represent 4 more elements of this framework. Reading is pretty obviously one of the necessary elements for a reading comprehension framework. It should always be accompanied by recording, otherwise known as taking notes. There are many options for how to take notes, and that's the subject of a different workshop video, but it's incredibly useful because it not only helps you to keep track of important points, it also utilizes different parts of your brain, and in doing so, helps you to remember what you read better than if you don't take notes. The 3rd R is for the process of working with the material to further develop your understanding. You may review it, that is, reread the assignment and reread the notes. You will reflect on what you're learning, and you will often rewrite notes and summaries. You might reorganize your notes or add some visual elements to them. This is also the point at which you'll try to seek out help if you feel that you don't understand things well enough. Your professor, your classmates, a tutor, or even YouTube can be great resources for you. The final R in SQ4R represents the process of self-testing, recalling and reciting from memory. This refers to the idea that the final step of reading comprehension is how well you remember and understand things when you're not looking at them. This is important because it means that the information will be available to you not only when you go to take a test or write a paper, but also in the rest of your daily life. So to review, SQ4R stands for survey, question, read, record, reflect, and recall, and it is the framework for our backwards reading strategy. In this next part of our video, we're going to provide a step-by-step guide for how to implement backwards reading. Step 1. Turn to the end of the reading assignment. Read the conclusion. What you're looking for is the thesis or main idea. Sometimes the conclusion is labeled with a subtitle, and sometimes you'll have to look for context clues to tell you where the conclusion begins. You can also read the introduction, and if you're reading an academic journal article, you should read the abstract. You'll often find the main idea there. There are several other places where you might find the main ideas. Is there a list of learning objectives? Are there review questions? As you're reading, make a list of the main ideas and important concepts. Look up any definitions that you don't know, and write down some questions. Step 2. Turn the pages from back to front. You're not trying to follow the argument yet, you're just scoping it out. Take note of the structure of the reading by identifying subtitles and context clues. Look for the main ideas again. Find important vocabulary words. If you have any more questions, write them down. Step 3. Make sure to spend some time looking at pictures, figures, and tables. What are they illustrating? Can you make sense of them on their own? It takes a lot of work and expense to include these elements in a published work, so what do you think makes them important enough to include? And guess what? If you have any questions, write them down. Step 4. Have you noticed that I keep recommending that you write down your questions? This list of questions will provide direction for your reading. It's much easier to remain focused and attentive when you are reading for a purpose. Your purpose is to search for the answers to your questions. So, with your list of questions next to you, you are ready to read from the beginning to the end. At this point, your backwards reading strategies will have helped you to better understand the main ideas and the structure of your reading assignment. So let's talk about a few more things that you can do that will increase your comprehension and critical thinking. First of all, I invite you to interrogate the text. We use the word interrogate deliberately because it means asking really difficult questions and then probing for even more information. How do you do that? Well, you've already been using one strategy. You've written down some questions that you'd like your reading assignment to answer. Next, try talking back to the text. Does the author make a claim that you disagree with? Does the author rely on data that you find unconvincing? Imagine what you would say if you were conversing with the person face to face. How would you respond? What counterargument might you make? Another strategy is to think about the assumptions that the author makes in the piece. Whether they are written or unwritten, assumptions are the beliefs and values that an author relies upon in framing their questions and their claims. If you can identify the assumptions, your ability to critically evaluate the writing will increase. Similarly, you should consider the implications of an author's conclusions. Implications are the potential outcomes or results of a claim or position. For example, if you're reading an opinion piece in favor of a specific government policy, you might want to ask some questions about whether that policy could have unintended consequences. Trying out some, or all, of these 4 interrogation strategies will help you to engage with your reading and understand it better. Finally, let's spend some time talking about writing. Writing is a powerful tool for improving reading comprehension. It can help you to remember key points, understand ideas, make connections with your own life and with other pieces of writing, and play around with the concepts until they make sense to you. Writing also gives you more insight into the process of drafting and editing that every writer goes through. So here are a few ways that you can incorporate writing into your reading practice. We've already discussed the importance of taking notes, and we have other resources that go into more details about different methods of note-taking. You should be taking notes as you read, in a notebook or even on the text itself. Use sticky notes if you don't want to write in your book. If you're taking notes in a notebook or a digital file, make sure to write down page numbers so that you can find those passages again later and cite them properly. Writing summaries at the end of each section or chapter will encourage you to think about main concepts and the most important details. It doesn't have to be fancy, it's just for your own use. So simply write down a few sentences as you finish each part of your reading. It's also helpful to spend some time writing down any answers that you've found to your questions. At some point, it's probably a good idea to reorganize and rewrite your notes. As you progress in your reading, as you progress in your class, your knowledge will develop. You may find that you now understand things better than you did at first. You will consolidate that knowledge in your long-term memory more easily if you keep working with it, and rewriting your notes is one good way to do that. One more strategy that you could use is the practice of open reflection writing. This type of writing is simply writing down all of your thoughts and ideas about a topic. This is another one of those cases where you don't need to worry about spelling or grammar, and you don't ever have to share it with anyone else. Just sit down and write what comes to mind. It will give you the opportunity to work through your ideas before you have to take an exam or write an essay for your professor. The final item on this list is something that you may do before, during, or after your writing as needed. That is, to check back in with your reading or with other sources to fill in any gaps in your knowledge. Sometimes this means using a dictionary to look up the definition of a word. Sometimes it may mean finding a YouTube video on the subject to give you some background information. Other times, you may need to return back to your reading assignment. Okay, let's do a quick review of the topics we covered in this video. The goals of this reading strategy and any reading comprehension strategy are to better understand the terminology, purpose, structure, writing strategies, and length of the piece. The framework we use for backwards reading is SQ4R, which stands for survey, question, read, record, reflect, and recall. The steps you can take to put this strategy into practice are: Step 1. Read the conclusion, learning objectives, introduction, and abstract. Step 2. Survey the piece from back to front. Step 3. Evaluate pictures, tables, and other figures. During all of these steps, you should be writing down all the questions that come to mind. And then, Step 4, read in order to answer your questions. Reading critically is important, so while you are reading, ask difficult questions. Argue back to the text. Evaluate the assumptions made by the author, and consider the implications of their conclusions. Incorporate writing into your reading practice by taking notes, writing up summaries and answers to your questions, rewriting your notes as your knowledge develops, doing open reflection writing, and taking the initiative to look up information that you don't understand. You don't have to use all of these strategies at once. Even using just one or two of them can help you to improve your reading comprehension. So try it out with your next reading assignment. We hope that you found the information in this video helpful. Feel free to contact us with questions or for more student success resources, and check out our other videos.